So economists are saying that your neighborhood influences your life outcome. Um, it's a little cliche to me, just that statement. It's a little, like I don't know that anybody is going to disagree with that. And I think if you disagree with that, then you probably have lived inside of a box your entire life, right? It's no surprise that your environment has a huge influence on the outcome of your life. And we've noticed that on both ends of the spectrum, right? From having a stable, financially stable, mentally stable household, we see how that tends to play out, and we see how having a financially unstable and mentally unstable household and neighborhood can affect it going the other way, right? But this video is to show some of the basic steps that families can take to create upward mobility in their household, kind of regardless of their circumstances, right? Just kind of what you can do, regardless of where you're from, where you grew up, where you came from, or just moving forward, if you're trying to start a family or whatever the case may be. I thought this was an excellent video to share, especially post-election, where there were quite a bit of people out there that were feel like because of the decision of the country, they have no way to move forward, right? So I want to share this. Oh, before I just wanted to make sure that I'm clear that where my stance is. My stance is that I'm confident that it is more important that what we learn and what we do in our household, that's more important than what is done in the White House, plain and simple, right? So that's really why I really wanted to share this video. And I've been wanting to share this video for a while, and I thought, oh, we'll see. Regardless of which way the election goes, I'm just going to share it post-election, because I know no matter what, whoever was selected, there were going to be a group of people that felt like they were wronged, right? So either way, this is a decent video. Y'all let me know what y'all think, all right? It's Ricky Rich of Black Primacy. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on your notifications.
Your neighborhood will determine much about your life trajectory. That's according to the Census Bureau. You can see the results for yourself in the Opportunity Atlas. The areas marked in green on this map show where low-income Black families are producing upwardly mobile children.
We don't choose where we're born, right? So now we know that just where you're born, down to the census tract, can determine so much about your future.
There's a whole body of work being done on this topic of economic mobility and trying to really peel back what are the levers.
Drive and ambition and talent is everywhere, but equitable access to opportunity is not always there.
In Washington, D.C., a strong public sector has produced many upwardly mobile Black families.
It's no secret that you have the Prince George County nearby is the leading per capita income for African Americans. I don't think it's any coincidence that it's adjacent to the Washington, D.C. area.
Woodrow Wilson is located in probably the highest end neighborhood in all of D.C. I was very lucky to be able to go there in high school. I was actually accepted accidentally. After a few days of kind of back and forth, they finally let me attend. So that sort of accidental mistake on their part was quite life-changing for me.
So what makes areas like D.C. so special for Black families?
So we're located located in Deanwood, Washington, D.C. It's on the far end of Northeast. I grew up here. We're sitting in the home where I grew up. My mom still lives here. She's lived in this neighborhood for over 40 years. It's a sort of lower end, working class neighborhood that is now kind of becoming a bit more gentrified. But certainly 20 years ago when I lived here was, kind of a rough and tumble place to grow up.
The median rent in Deanwood is 47% lower than the city as a whole. The area has a relatively low incarceration rate, and it also has low rates of discrimination. That's measured using implicit bias testing as well as an explicit analysis of Google search results.
Should we, maybe to put it in a less diplomatic way, should we blame poverty on people, on individuals and the choices they've made, or are there external factors that are really determining their life course?
The findings were published in this paper. This particular study followed 20 million Americans over 35 years. They tracked which children went on to earn more than their parents as they matured into adulthood.
So we can actually put a dollar amount on the contribution of every census tract and commuting zone county in the U.S. on kids' adult income. You can be an individual success story, but we still know that there's something going on at the neighborhood level that's on average driving differences across kids.
When it comes to raising Black boys, strong results are coming from the suburbs of Houston and San Antonio. The highest performing neighborhoods are in New York City and near D.C. The outcomes from Deanwood are relatively poor when compared to the national median. But if the variables are set to focus on the Black population, the neighborhood's potential begins to show. Andre's story is a highlight.
I really had no ambitions towards going to college because that wasn't a pathway that I had seen over the course of my life. However, my college counselor at Wilson essentially said that she wouldn't help me with my applications if I didn't apply to Morehouse. I ended up getting accepted to Morehouse on academic probation.
Some groups have taken to opportunity faster than others.
The numbers don't lie. Women are really driving participation in post-secondary education, which has been a traditional ladder of economic mobility.
We know from broader research that boys are more sensitive to family and environmental inputs than girls are in terms of their later on outcomes like in education or in income. So that seems to be consistent with what I'm finding. The other piece that's important is that when you think about our criminal justice system, it really disproportionately affects one group in the population, and that's Black men.
Over the 20th century, many Black Americans took up jobs in the public sector.
Between roughly 1915 and 1970, 6 million Black Americans left the U.S. South, where 90% of the Black population lived at the turn of the 20th century, and migrated to cities in the North and the West and the Midwest of the country. In the 1960s, the federal government and the public sector overall just expanded tremendously, and this became a very important source of employment for Black Americans.
Justice Marshall, the great-grandson of a slave, swore to do equal right to the poor and to the rich.
I think the federal government did do something that many private sector companies did not do, that is provide opportunity based upon merit.
This movement provided a foundation for future generations.
DC, the Black population grew to such an extent that it earned the nickname or moniker Chocolate City by having this nexus of Black intellectuals and middle-class workers that actually sows the seeds for more germination of ideas.
Today, 1 in 5 Black workers are employed by government agencies.
Still today, African Americans, while the federal government provides perhaps more opportunity, is actually the largest employer of African Americans in the country. At the same time, we still struggle with the promotion rates being slower than that of similarly situated and educated whites.
Unfortunately, Black families' participation in the public sector leaves them exposed to economic shocks. In recent downturns, Congress has limited funding for state and local government hiring. The instability can make it more difficult to save and pass inheritances on to the next generation.
There's an income issue. We find that at every income level, Black Americans actually save more than other segments of the population. So the issue is that the income is too low.
The pandemic has made labor inequality obvious. Black workers are overrepresented in frontline work, according to McKinsey.
The question that the pandemic has raised is, given what we know about how essential these jobs are we providing adequate compensation, adequate scheduling predictability, adequate benefits?
McKinsey finds that racial income disparities are driven by just 5 sectors. The list includes finance, manufacturing, and construction.
We find that there's around a $220 billion annual wage gap in terms of the income being paid to Black Americans if they were earning their fair share of the wages paid based on their population.
Entrepreneurs like Andre McCain can shape what happens next. After 7 years in finance and real estate, he brought a new restaurant brand to D.C.
This was around the time when you really saw takeoff in fast casual restaurants and also a huge restaurant renaissance. It seemed like a very large opportunity to take a product that is so versatile, like a sausage that we eat on a bun or on a pizza or for breakfast, and create a restaurant that kind of pays homage to that, but in a very cool way.
McCain says that one of the biggest challenges in launching was finding both investors and real estate.
Investors want to know where's the restaurant going to be, which you can't tell them until you convince the landlord to give you the space. And investors want to know how much is the startup investment going to cost, but you can't also know that until you find the space. And then you've also got to go find the investors who are interested in investing in you and investing in the restaurant. Those early years were very, very tough.
The business community believes that more attention needs to go towards the basic health and well-being of Black Americans. 42% of Black workers hold jobs that are subject to disruption by 2030.
Small businesses which employ the vast majority of people in America have to compete with large businesses which have a lot more resources. And so when you think about benefits like healthcare and 401ks and the ability to subsidize those benefits, it's really tough for a small business to do that. And so because of that, you are at a massive competitive disadvantage. For us at Half Smoke, we, now that we're in sort of growth mode, we're just now getting into being able to provide benefits, and that's like a game changer, not only in terms of just the right things to do, but also in terms of our ability to keep people and also to source the best talent.
Businesses could also better serve the Black consumer. For example, food deserts remain an issue in eastern D.C.
And so as a result, you end up eating a lot of food from carryouts and from corner stores.
More than 8 million Americans, Black Americans, live in food deserts. You're twice as likely to live in a healthcare desert if you're a Black American, 20% more likely to live in a banking desert. And so this creates a big opportunity. And we tried to quantify what the dissatisfaction was worth if someone could get it right, so to speak. And so the aggregate of those two analyses was around $300 billion. That's just today.
Cities like D.C. are focusing on this problem.
We are the recipient of 2 awards from the D.C. government to sort of eradicate some of these food deserts, especially as it relates to full-service restaurants. It was a great feeling. I certainly wanted to do it for a very long time. It still isn't economically feasible without some sort of subsidy. And so the fact that the city recognizes that is a great thing.
Then there's tax policy. It also has a massive impact on upward mobility. For example, most American public schools are funded with property taxes. That dynamic can worsen inequality.
We as a society have decided how we want to fund education. That choice results in the students who need the most support getting less support. At a philosophical level, making a decision that we're going to prioritize the health of our citizens regardless of their income, I think will have huge implications for people, certainly people's lives, but also the aggregate economy.
Federal policies play a huge role too. McKinsey finds that at least 30% of government spending amplifies existing racial disparities. These come in the form of write-offs on real estate, stock investing, and family trusts. Solutions could come in 3 forms. One would be housing vouchers for low-income families. Another could be an expansion in the child tax credit. Then there are local policies.
And it's the choices that the local governments representing those populations and the people in power make. When we think about it from that perspective, instead of just moving a tiny fraction of families from a low opportunity area to a high opportunity area, we can think about how to transform the places where people currently live.
The most potent changes could come from programs like the Network for Teaching Entrepreneurship. Andre enrolled in this free program while commuting 2 hours a day to attend his high school. He still participates in the program as a mentor.
You know, the good news is that many companies are very interested in work in supporting entrepreneurship education. So leading companies like Ernst & Young, Microsoft, SAP, Goldman Sachs, Moody's, they all contribute to NIFTY, but they're also shrewd and they understand that they need to start developing the workforce of the future.
When people give back and the kids are able to see people from the business community and they're able to interact with them, it really kind of demystifies what the world is like.
The idea that just the supervisor at the local grocery store is African American, just the idea that when you go into the bank and may see the manager, and the manager just happens to be African American, right? All of these pieces come together to communicate the story that African American is normal.
Entrepreneurship is a vehicle to bring you to the greatest articulation of what your dreams could be.
So I think that's really where it all starts, is just improving the quality of the school system so everyone can continue to have these great opportunities.
All right. I hope you all are able to grasp what's being said there, right? For me, I mean, you hear there's a lot of, there's a lot of things that needs to change policy wise and throughout this country, things that needs to change mentally, right? But in my opinion, a lot of that will likely never change, right? Right. In the Black community, there will always be, or we'll say in the underserved neighborhoods, there will always be policies in place to keep those neighborhoods down, in a sense, right? But what I'm hearing there is are the three main ways that we can change, right? And I think we all know this, but it's good to hear again, is education, career choice, overall, and then entrepreneurship, right? Um, where like the gentleman mentioned, like he was fortunate enough to get into one of the top schools in the DC area, right? Went to school there and then was fortunate enough to be connected with a counselor that told him that I can't remember exactly what he said. I'd have to rewind it, but something along the lines of she was only going to help him get into Morehouse, right? Which he ultimately did. He took his education from there, started a career, and ultimately landed in entrepreneurship that has offered him a pretty decent place in the I guess we'll say economic spectrum or whatever. And you all know how I feel about entrepreneurship, especially Black entrepreneurship. I've always said, and I mean that's what Black primacy is about, right? that's what the goal is to facilitate the idea of taking over your life financially, take it over by yourself, with your own hands, right? I'm all for jobs and working for somebody. Absolutely. That's how most of us are able to get started in entrepreneurship. But you have to, at the very least, you have to have something on the side that you have full control over, because no matter what, these companies will not pay you what you are worth. right? So you have to be able to transition into places. I'm sorry, transition when things happen, and things will happen. I myself have been laid off. I'm sure those of you out there who have been laid off from a job, you know what that's like, right? Especially from a job that you've had for a good amount of time. And these types of things are going to continue to happen, especially as technology grows. Like they said, I think it was what 30% of African Americans have are in hold positions. 30% of African Americans hold positions that are expected to be um, disrupted by the year 2030. Right, that's not that long from now. Right, and I just dropped a video the other day regarding the prison guards are now being replaced by robots. Right, and that is a huge in my opinion, from people that I know quite a few, and have family members and friends that uh, are correct in corrections, correctional officers. So it's likely that at some point, probably not the people that I know, they probably won't be affected much because by the time they get to the point where they're actually using these robots, um, it'll likely be sometime right around retirement for many people my age, right? I see that happen in another 20. I don't see that really affecting the industry for another 20 to 30 years. um, but either way, it's still there. And I've had family members in the corrections since I was born, and still have family members today, and will likely have family members working in corrections, in the next 20 years. So there needs to be, it needs to be highlighted that hey, that career choice may not be as stable as it once was, right? Um, but I wanted to share this video. This to me, just like I said, highlighted some of those key points, right? Starting with education, especially as for our youth, right? Not just your basic education, history, and all this other stuff. Like we as a community, I feel, need to be more intentional with the education and education choices and the schools that we send our kids to, um, and stop just telling them like just go get a college degree, but instead tell them like you're gonna go to school, you're gonna go to college or trade school or whatever. You're gonna be intentional. You're gonna look at where we are today, and you're going to position yourself to be able to um, not only get a good job, but learn how to fend for yourself and be able to pivot when the economy changes. Because I don't think that there is a generation out there that has not experienced a pivot, um, like an economy pivot, like a job market pivot. That's what I'm saying, like a job market pivot throughout their working career, right? Like, yeah, I think like for me, for my parents who are baby boomers, um, for them, you know, when they were out of high school, college really, it wasn't as it wasn't pushed as much as it is today. It was more military. Like you got out of high school, you went to the military, you served your country, and you were doing well if you went to the military, stayed in the military, you'd retire in the military, and you leave the military after 4 8 years or whatever, and you go and you get a good job, and that was as good as a college degree back then, right? That's not necessarily the case these days, right? And even these days, for us going out of getting out of high school, it was go to college. It doesn't matter what you go to college for. Go to college, go get that degree. And now already, right? um, we are seeing that the college degree has lost its luster, right? Less people are going to get it. It's too expensive. You're finding that people are not, or we as millennials and even Gen Z are finding that the reward is not as great as it once was, and so you got a lot of people opting not to go to college, right? Which I somewhat disagree with, just somewhat. I agree with it somewhat, but I somewhat disagree with, because I feel like if you are intentional about what you choose to go to college for, then it is absolutely a great investment. If you do it the way that we were taught to do it, right? Which was, like I said, just go get a degree. It doesn't matter. Go get go get a degree and go get a good job. Those were the basic. Those were the basic criteria for us. Um, then if you do it that way, you're gonna you're gonna you don't need to do it that way these days. So again, just be intentional. They say be intentional with your education, be intentional with your career choice, and also figure out a way to get into this entrepreneurship world. I cannot stress that enough. All right. I'm not saying you need to go be the next Jeff Bezos, but can you imagine just creating something, a product, service, whatever, that can generate you an extra $40,000 a year, 30,000, even we'll say $30,000 a year. Like even if that's the best that you can do, right? On the entrepreneurship scale, right? Just you got your full-time job and you have a side service or product that you are able to get out for $30,000 a year. Do you realize that will completely change the trajectory of your retirement, your future, and your future wealth? $30,000 a year. If you take that 30,000 and you just invest it for 10 years, 20 years, right? Starting today, like, you would be so much better off um on economically. Like, so much better off, because the jobs will not pay you, and the jobs will not invest in you more than or anywhere near what you can and will invest in yourself. All right. So didn't mean for the video to be this long, but it is what it is. I hope y'all tapped in. All right. It's Ricky. Y'all let me know what y'all think, first of all. All right. It's Ricky Rich with Black Primacy. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on your notifications.